All right, this time I want to do something a little different. So I'm sitting here with my notepad and a pencil, and I'm just going to scribble a little bit and talk about fantasy designs. I'm wearing a GoPro for the first person view, also to make it a little easier so I don't have the tripod in the way. Let me know if it's too shaky, I can possibly redo it. So when drawing fantasy designs, some people don't care. Whatever, they draw whatever the heck they feel like, that's fine, they're artists, it's up to them. And this is not about realism per se. I'm mainly going to talk about how to make a design more appealing. I mean, to a particular mindset. I get it, it's all personal preference, but I do think there is quality difference in designs. I think there's a difference between realism and making sense, internal consistency and logic and all of that. So I'll tell you what I mean. So, for example, say, I'm just gonna draw an outline here. So say we have a sword right here. It's got some kind of pommel, whatever. Doesn't really matter too much. And oh yeah, by the way, I do draw with the left even though I'm otherwise right-handed. Don't ask me how that works. Let's say it's a magical sword. So it's got these floating pieces here on the guard. That could be glowing in between and whatever. Something like that, because magic, because it's cool. Now, that would be one way to do it. You could even go further and say, oh yeah, the blade also comes like this, and it's just floating here in between for whatever reason. As said, because cool. Let's just say, yeah, whatever. Let's just say the rest of the blade is solid for some reason. So this, of course, okay, fantasy. Nobody cares, right? Can be magic, can have a little gem here and whatnot. That's all fine and good. But it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense as a guard now, does it? Unless you have a kind of force field here that permeates that. And in that case, why even have solid pieces? You could just have an invisible guard. Or you could have just this, kind of plasma thing. It's just kind of somewhere glowing and blah, blah, that kind of thing. But if you wanted to have a design like this, wouldn't it make more sense if it goes up here, and then we've got the floaty pieces. All right, something like this. So I didn't really leave enough space for the blade now, did I? So something like this, perhaps, and then the blade is just here. A little crooked, but whatever. So something like this. Now, why does this make more sense? Both are unrealistic, obviously, because, hey, floating stuff, magic, can't happen in real life. But this actually makes sense, because if an opponent's sword, and this is the cross-section here, if it goes in like this, it may actually become trapped in the guard. If the opponent strikes like this and then turns their wrist or whatever and tries to remove it, it gets stuck on this part here. So this actually makes some sense. It's got, a functional purpose. It can trap a blade while still being all floaty and glowy and magic-y and stuff. So a slightly different grip here, like this. Say this one has a ring pommel, whatever. It doesn't matter too much what it is. And then we've got a guard here. Now I'm just going to make this fantasy, all right? This is not a guard that I've seen on any historical sword. Ugh, come on, phone. there. Let's say like this. Blah. Okay, that's not very good. But fine. Let's say there's a gem here, perhaps. And then here there's a blade. Some spikes there. Okay. So, that's a fantasy sword, right? This, in this kind of way, did not exist in history. Okay, other side. And I don't like how not parallel that is. Might be a little pedantic, but whatever. Let's say on this side, we've got this and this. You can already see where the problem is right there. And say, let's say we reverse that. So we're going to go like this, right? Pretty much reversed. Not perfectly, but all right. Okay. So, and then let's reverse the spikes here as well. Yeah, that's ugly, but that's kind of the point. So, again, both of these are a fantasy sword. This one is horrible. That not so much. I mean, you can argue, how ugly this is and whatever. I think it's okay, but the point here is that even though this is fantasy, this is bullshit. I mean, sorry, but frankly, that's what it is. This, you're still thinking about a scenario in which somebody, some humanoid person picks this up. They have a palm, they have a number of fingers, between, say, 3 and 6 or whatever, which have to wrap around here somehow. They have a wrist and a forearm, right? How? I mean, this would poke you right in the wrist. That would poke you in the forearm. It would limit your movement drastically. These do not serve a purpose at that point, because while these, if say a sword blade comes down, so that's a cross section of the opponent's sword, comes down, hits this, right? Gets stuck, or bounces off or whatever. Here, opponent's sword cut comes in, glances off, goes, if you're lucky, goes on this, which is also downswept, which can redirect it further, and guess what's here? The forearm. So this is going to go right onto the user's forearm. Doesn't matter how magical this is, unless it's got some kind of, magical strike repelling aura. And personally, I really don't like whenever magic is just used as this lazy, generic placeholder explanation. Magic is cool, okay? So this thing could be burning or, sparkling or whatever. It can have some kind of magical effect to enhance it, which can be totally cool. But, I mean, why just use magic to fix something that is horribly broken to begin with? Why not make a nicer design? You could still have, spikes and angular shapes and whatever. Let me just, okay, so I'm just going to go over here. And you know what? Just so you can see a little better, I'm just going to use this one here. So I'm going to use, do a pretty unconventional design. Let's say, all right. Let's make it somewhat asymmetrical, but still, graspable. Let's put it like that. Let's say we have a spiked pommel here, and say we have some angular shapes here. Here's some spikes. You know, this kind of thing. Let's say we have something here similar to some of the rings on historical swords. And sorry, I was a bit too high there with the camera perspective. And let's say we've got a bunch of stuff going on here. Okay. This on the inside should be smooth because you don't want to poke yourself, right? Okay. And the GoPro's telling me it needs to be charged soon. But we're going to get this done first. Okay. So you can have all kinds of decorative lines here, say, or you could even have whatever. Well, those are just 2s, aren't they? Let's make it. Let's make them look less like numbers. Turn them into 8s. That was smart. It doesn't really matter all that much. Let's just say, some kind of, fancy decoration here. The index finger can go here. Say the thumb can really go wherever, be it hammer grip or saber grip. Okay. That's usable. It's a little large. I should have drawn the hand larger in relation to the thing, but okay. So let's say we go out here. Let's have an additional thing for catching blades. And then I'm just going to go crazy here. Okay. Now this personally isn't my thing. Like, I don't think this is nice looking terribly. But at least it's something that, makes a certain degree of sense. Even if it's not the prettiest thing in the world, it's fantasy. And I would be terribly confident that it would be the greatest thing and the most comfortable thing if you made this. But, at least it's not completely self-defeating. It's got a guard. None of the spikes poke towards the user. This can actually catch a blade. Here's a spike for striking. Now, of course, stuff like that can endanger the user, but at least not completely over the top. Another thing is, really large weapons. Let's just say we've got this big ass axe here. Very fantasy, right? Okay. Maybe it could have a cutout here. Or maybe it doesn't. Whatever. So, say we've got a pretty large axe blade here. And then it's on, you know what? I'm just going to do that with a pencil. Let's say that's the handle. Do you see the problem with that? I mean, you could argue, oh, well, magical or high-tech materials or whatever, super strong, blah, blah. It still looks wrong. I mean, this is just, the proportion is off. Like, artistically, this is not well done, even if you want to argue it's just fantasy. If you want to do, this kind of thing here, there. Now we're talking. That's a much better shaped handle. Now, this thing is still humongous, no doubt about it. But at least it's not completely off here, right? What the hell? That's not what I wanted. Okay, another one. Let's say we've got this kind of thing here. Relatively small guard. And let's say one person does this. Okay, what's up with that? This is just asking to be broken. That piece right here. So, in my opinion, you could go about it two different ways. Either you can say, all right, this is kind of a small sword, so it's got a fairly narrow blade to begin with. Or let's say this is actually the fuller, and like this shoots out a little bit, and oops, don't really have a steady hand today. And then it's sort of leaf shaped but tapering strongly. That just looks better. It's just a better design overall. So let me know what you think. Would you like me to do this more often, where I just sit here with my notepad and just talk about designs and make some suggestions and everything? I hope this might be helpful for artists and fantasy writers and whatnot. And now I kind of drew it so that this sword is just screwing that one, isn't it? Anyway, not family friendly, don't look at this. So thanks for watching.